Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week, I'm going to talk about an anime that caught me by surprise this year. I'm really good at going back and watching stuff. When I watch new things, I kind of go through phases. It's really not a matter of what's new. It's stuff that I might have missed, something I may have heard of, but not really. Same thing with Vanitas. Well, but even case study of Vanitas, I'd heard of it before, so I kind of knew. But every so often, I'll just put something on that I had in my list forever, because I tend to just keep a queue, because you never know what you're gonna find. I try finding stuff after stuff after stuff, and maybe the acting isn't good, maybe the story's dumb, maybe it's too stupid, I don't know. But many different reasons, I'm looking through shows, and I'm looking through shows, and I'm looking through shows, and I'm like, okay, I need something, and it's not coming to me. This time, though, I was hooked, and then the best parts of it came almost immediately, like 1 or 2 episodes in, and I was like, this is gonna work, because that's rare. And the show I'm talking about in question was Space Battleship Yamato, 2199. So a little bit of a backstory. I had no foreknowledge of something like Yamato. Apparently this was made in the early 70s, and they had a ton of success, good runs of animated features, movies, extra seasons. But the property just kind of goes away here and there. Funimation gets the license, and then they redo everything in 2000, I believe it's 2012, 2013. So they do their own spin on it. But they do enough justice to where it feels the same. Now, having not seen the footage of the original Yamato, I can't say that much. They don't have that access there. But for this and for 2202, which is its direct sequel, which I'll try not to spoil too much of this show because it does feed into each other, this is the sort of thing that I wish more space operas were. And I do think that a lot of shows try to do it, but they also don't succeed so much. Let me see if I can explain this. When I was growing up, I was a big Star Trek guy, because my dad is like the biggest Star Trek guy, the biggest Trekkie you'll ever see. He's one of those people that will talk endlessly and watch endlessly that series and those movies. And like the first 10 movies, not so much the recent ones with Chris Pine, but just in general, those first 10 movies, the TV shows, for me, later seasons of Generation, Next Generation, that was the stuff that I remember. But you also have to remember that I was invested in this all the time because my dad always liked Star Trek. So I wouldn't say I have a passing fantasy with space operas. It's just that I'm willing to look at it if it's done in the right way. So you always have that Star Wars versus Star Trek mindset, because those are the two biggest properties. Where do you fall into it? For me, I don't really care about super technology and crazy visuals and all this crazy stuff. I care about, are the people in the show people that I care about? Are the people going on this journey people that I care about? The same thing that happens to me with mech shows. And I don't really care about mech shows all that much, because mech shows kind of just add an extra layer on top of the humanity rather than having the humanity there. The last mech show I watched was Full Metal Panic. And, I'm okay with certain shows like that. That's why I haven't really done a review of Evangelion or Razafon or stuff like that. It's because I'm not really into that. I really want it to be about the person inside the armor, not about, oh, it's a big mech and it's got visuals and it's a big thing. I was able to kind of zone out this show when they were trying to do the space battle stuff. Though, to be fair, there is space battles and space mumbo-jumbo and wave motion guns and all that junk. But really, this show succeeds because of every other reason other than that. The idea, that Star Trek mentality where you're invested in the characters because they actually spend time as characters. Those times where you're on the bridge of the Enterprise and the crew is playing a card game. They're not messing with people. They're not messing with new aliens and new life forms and new junk. They're just sitting there talking. And they're interacting with each other. I said this in an episode of Ergo Proxy, where my favorite episode was about 15 episodes in, where the main characters were stuck in a desert somewhere, and they just sat around doing nothing, and they were kind of in their own heads. The same idea applies. Where Yamato succeeds is not the battle scenes, is not the, oh, we're going to a place to do a thing. We're actually showing you the characters and why they're going on this journey. Some are being separated from their families, but they're trying to protect their families from whatever's going on. Some are going on the journeys because it's self-discovery. Some are doing it for research purposes. Some are doing it for vengeance, to get revenge on whatever's going on, whether it's directly caused or in the scope of the show, they'll find their way to get vengeance. Other times, it's just focusing on kind of the main 2 or 3. But what I feel is its strongest suit, and I'll go into this a little more detail, is the fact that not only are you learning about the main characters, you actually get to see scenes from the other side. You got your typical villains, and I would put, I would put okay, they're the opposing sides, and they're the war, and they're the typical, not Nazis, right? I don't want to, the totalitarianism, the fascism. I get that, but I don't want to say that's directly what they're doing, but at the same time, it's kind of obvious that is what they're doing. But you get to see the humanity of the people that are there. Not so much the villains, or the main guy. The main guy is problematic because his logic is all fucked up. But the people next to him, some of them are just your typical stock villains that don't do anything. They're just there to kiss his ass and follow instruction, and they get their comeuppance in different ways. But when they start introducing people and they go onto the ground level of this other society, these alien races, and they say, okay, these people are here doing this. They actually have lives. They actually have families on some instances. And then you end up having to fight them because they were just different sides. That's the sort of thing that this show really grabs people with. Because you have all the fancy stuff, the fancy mumbo-jumbo, but you have the characters trying to piece together their reasons for being on what side they're on. Because sometimes you work together, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's a life or death struggle, sometimes you don't. And that's where the best parts of space opera go. It's about the people, not necessarily humans, though there are humans there. It's the people that are involved. And that's where stuff like Star Trek succeeded, was because they were focusing on aspects other than the space stuff. They weren't overloaded with space stuff. They were to a point. So I could zone out during some of the battles, but I could see where they were going as this person is doing this and it's reckless, or they're doing whatever, they're finding ways to succeed in their mission. So we'll backtrack a little bit, but I did want to mention that up front. This is a show about digging deep into the characters and finding their reasons and their relationships, because there's like 20 to 30 people that you want to get to know, and most of them are pretty simple. Others are not. Others get a lot of focus, others do not. But they spend time. This was a show made back when you had 24 episodes, and then they made a second season. You had 24, 26, so anywhere from 48 to 52 episodes to explore not only the setting, but the people and the mechanics around what's going on. But the basic plot is people from a planet known as Gamilos have taken over Earth. Radioactive, they've just blown it, nuked it. So cities have gone underground, and people have to find this place known as Iskandar. They need this technology to terraform the Earth, basically, re-terraform it. So a ragtag group of people have been enlisted and drafted into this space military organization to get this old-ass ship called the Yamato up and running. Their trump card is this extra thing that was given to them by an Iskandarian known as a wave motion gun or wave motion energy. So they use it as an engine, but the crux of, I would say, a big part of the show is to not use it as a weapon. You know, that prime directive, don't interfere, that sort of situation. And they end up doing it on more than one occasion because it's their fail-safe. It's their get-out-of-jail-free card. But they also spend time as characters knowing that situation. So you kind of work with the main characters as like, we're using this in the wrong way. We're using this as a weapon because we have no alternative. Because a lot of the cool stuff that the enemies do is stuff like interdimensional travel and interdimensional fights. There was a like a cloaked Klingon vessel, for lack of a better term. It just basically can cloak in a different dimension and attack you. So how the fuck are you supposed to fight that? It's invisible and it's in another dimension. You can't fucking hit it. So they use the wave motion gun. They find mechanics. They throw in a different, while they're facing the main bad guy, they throw him in like this weird dimensional warp hole thing, and they use just enough, that whole typical thing, just 1 second too late, and boom, they're off into space while they're stuck, killing the rest of them. That sort of mechanics. So they get out of these situations. But again, I find the battle sequences are there to justify what the characters are going through. And as far as characters go, you have the main character, Susumu Kodai. His brother died in the original invasion because he did the reckless thing of trying to stop I believe it was gather information, but passed away, unfortunately. So Susumu's idea is he's going to get vengeance, but he's also going to try to kind of elevate his brother's memory. Like, I can't find the right word, but you know what I'm saying. The respect his memories and his wishes and honor his memory. That's the word. Honor his memory by going through this mission to go from Earth to Iskandar and fight the Gamilos and all that stuff. So he's joined by Yuki Mori, who is amnesiac, which always kind of catches it off guard. The show does a weird thing where they kind of tell you one thing is going to be a love story for a couple episodes, and they just completely drop it. There's like another character who sort of has feelings for Kodai, and they kind of just ignore it, and then they slowly just go right into the relationship with Yuki. It's not bad. It was just something I noticed. It was like, they don't even they do it, and they don't even bring it up later. And it's just forgotten. Like, did we even do this story plot line? Did we do this plot thread? Like, they didn't. I don't know if they even did like that love triangle nonsense. Like, you feel like they're going to, but they don't. So in a way, it's kind of refreshing that they don't. But it also seems like, well, why did you bother giving them screen time if you're not going to pursue it? So it's like doing a cliche, but also dodging a cliche at the same time. So Kodai and Yuki slowly kind of piece together their feelings for each other. Yuki figures out who she is, but that's her thing. The other main character is Captain Okita. His whole thing is he is a grizzled veteran officer. He knows what to do in every bad situation, and he is responsible for his crew, and he will make the tough decisions so that everybody else doesn't have to. But he will respect them enough that he knows that this is a terrible situation they find themselves in. Do we use these weapons that they gave us as this failsafe? Do we disrespect the memory of the people who basically risked their lives to get there? But how many people am I willing to sacrifice to get to the place that I'm going if I'm going to get my ass blown up, you know? But he's also pretty smart. So it's between, you know, it's not always his answer, you know. He doesn't always have the answer. And I wouldn't put him in the reckless, you know, Captain Kirk mode. But he's not like purely Captain Picard either, you know. So it's kind of like, I'd say 75% Captain Picard, 25% Kirk, where he's just like gruff and whatever, you know. But he's the old stern dude, but he has that sense of humanity in him, and that's the point. He's always willing to talk to people. He spends time with his doctor buddy who drinks, you know, the Kirk and Bones thing where, you know, let's have a drink. And, you know, there's like this undercurrent of this being his last mission because of some random illness or something, and he understands the gravity of the situation, you know. So he's also like taking Kodai under his wing to be his successor without him knowing it, without Kodai knowing it, which is a nice touch. So their whole thing is they're fighting this Gamilas Empire, the basically blue-skinned people, you know. They're led by Lord Dessler. The idea with him is that he is just the typical rude bad guy, but he's the magnificent lord of this empire and will stop at nothing. They go into the second season with a different guy, a more imposing looking guy named Emperor Zorder, who's got this. They changed it in the 2002 version, because in the old version he was just, you know, I'm going to blow shit up and I'm going to ruin it all. But his motivation in this version is interesting because he's kind of like taking a philosophical nihilism where he sees what people have as affection and love. His trigger word is love. He will just obsess over it because his people have no emotions. It's the idea of Kingdom Hearts and nobodies. The idea that they are so obsessed with the things they don't have so that they're expressing it in destructive ways to test it, to see it, to test other people. So Zorder is different from Dessler because Dessler is just trying to overthrow the world. And again, Zorder was going to do that too, but they changed it to focus on this interesting idea where he's just making these monologues about people are stupid or they're encapsulated and captured and basically, you know, enchanted by the idea of love, and not even just love as sexuality or sensuality, love as familial, love as friendship, that sort of thing, and it clouds people's judgment. So he's there to fucking destroy you and prove that it's a bunch of shit. So it's an interesting idea. I don't think the second season is as strong as the first because they do focus on characters again, but I do think like it's that second season syndrome where you kind of already know that they've already done what they've needed to do. This is more talking about the ramifications of the first season and what they built up and what they sacrificed, and then are you willing to go back into the field and do this to save what you've built up? And then you find out what they've built up is not as fun as it was because they've got this like hidden cache of like new airships that are like supposedly stronger than the Yamato, but they're doing it in like secret, like a secret weapons procurement facility in a different dimension sort of thing. So it's like, haha, look at us, we're evil stockbrokers and evil what? We're laundering money, we're laundering, you know, it's kind of that. It's like they're laundering weapons, you know, for self-defense, but it's also done for that weird reason that's like, we're doing it because we're doing it, because we're assholes. Because just because we got rid of Gamilas, or just because we did what we set out to do in the first season, doesn't mean that people have learned a lesson. And there's something to be said for that. Again, the humanity involved with learning about the other side, learning what this city, what this new planet looks like, who the characters are, getting kind of deep into who Dessler and Zwarder are as people, and giving them, you're getting them their stupid villain lines, but you're also giving them and their subordinates, this guy is his direct captain or sergeant or whatever, but he's also a person who has a family, or the side person next to this dude is in love with them or whatever, so the weird mechanics involved. But then you go back to the main party, and then you have the 20 or so people on the crew of the Yamato who have their own relationships. As I said before, the Kodai and Yukimori thing, where they slowly get together, but then the other people were still talked about. Obviously the main three characters are going to take the bulk of the screen time, but you never feel like you're shortchanged seeing the people. You're given enough of the other people to actually make it feel like it is a ship's crew, and that you actually can gravitate to them as people. So this was effective, again, at using the 20-some episodes that they had. And again, they were going off of a framework. They change enough of the story to fit what they're going for in this new version, but they don't stray so far that it's, bastardizing the version. It's just retelling the story as close to it. The idea of remaking a thing for a new audience, without changing too much. It's the idea, because some people like changing things for the sake of change. Other people are like, no, just make it look better, just make it sound better. That's really kind of what they're kind of doing here, as far as I can tell. They changed some mechanics around as for some motivations, but mostly the visuals are going to mirror that 1970s look. The character designs, it looks and feels like a current anime, but they're also trying to ape the 1970s aesthetic, which is a nice touch, which gives it something unique. So if that's something you're looking for, or if you're into that space opera stuff, that you just need something new that tries something new, or at least tries something that should be new but gets lost in translation sometimes, Yamato is going to be something good for you. It's on Crunchyroll, as are almost all of my recommendations these days. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I'm not really bowled over by too many shows anymore. This is one of those ones that caught me by surprise and stuck with me and stuck the landing. But that will do for this week. Next week is Persona 4 Golden. Oh, goody. I talked about that for an hour, and I loved every second of it. Let's look at the rest of what we're going to do. We've got... Next week, out of character, This episode is going to happen after Persona, So it's going to be Xenosaga. I had Persona on the brain because I'm finishing up recording that. But I did enjoy doing the Persona 4 episode. So... this is why you have a schedule listing. So yes, Persona was done after this episode, before this episode, So Xenosaga. So we're going back-to-back space opera stuff in a different way. We go from Star Trek to Evangelion, for better or for worse. But Xenosaga 1's pretty good, so I'm not going to complain much. After that is RWBY episode, or volume 9, and then it will be my 2-year podcast anniversary, where I kind of run down my top 3 and bottom 3 favorite and least favorite video game playthroughs on my other channel. So I do have a general idea, but when it comes down to it, I might end up changing my mind, because I only have spots for 3, because I wanted to do a top 5, but I don't have enough to say badly about other things to just ramble on. So who knows what the podcast anniversary will actually be like when I actually record it. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, despite me getting the order of the episodes wrong. But hey, We go from one space episode to another space episode next week, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and all that jazz, and I will see you next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.